The plain envelope arrived at my office, innocuous, yet devastating. Inside, a USB drive revealed Sarah, my wife, entering a hotel room with Todd Anderson, her logistics manager. The video's timestamp screamed the night of Brenda Hayes' bachelorette party. A text overlay. Thought you should know, Kay. The quiet message, a chilling gift from Kyle, left me exposed. The plain manila envelope sat on my desk, among utility bills and sales reports. No return address, just my name, handwritten in a looping script I didn't recognize. It was mid-morning, Tuesday, a typical November day in the office. I slit the flap with a letter opener, pulled out a small black USB drive. No note, just the drive. Curious, I plugged it into my workstation. A video file appeared, labeled B. Hayes Party. I clicked it. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy, shaky footage. It was a hotel hallway. Generic, beige carpet, numbered doors. A little after midnight, the timestamp in the bottom left corner read, December 12th. Brenda Hayes' bachelorette party. Sarah had been out late that night. She told me she'd crashed at Brenda's place with the other bridesmaids, too tired to drive home. Then I saw her. Sarah. She walked into frame, laughing, arm linked with a man. Todd Anderson, her logistics manager. He had a slight, nervous smile. They stopped at a door, fumbled with a keycard. She leaned in, whispered something to him. Then her hand rested on his arm as the door clicked open. They disappeared inside. The footage was brief, maybe 20 seconds. Enough. The video looped once, then a stark white text box materialized over the image. Thought you should know, Kay. My phone rang, startling me. I glanced at the screen. Kyle Jensen. I hadn't spoken to Kyle since high school. Maybe a decade ago. He'd been a couple of grades below me. I'd once talked a football coach out of benching him for an off-field incident. A small thing, long forgotten. Mark. Kyle's voice was calm, almost flat. Did you get my package? I did, I said, my own voice surprisingly steady. Why? Just returning a favor, he said. Remember that time with Coach Miller? You stood up for me. Saved my spot on the team, I remembered. That was years ago, Kyle. Doesn't matter, he said. I saw something. Didn't sit right. Felt like you should know. You work at that hotel? I asked. Something like that, he said. He didn't elaborate. Just needed to let you know. Thank you, Kyle, I said. It was all I could think to say. Take care, Mark. He hung up. I closed the video file, then reopened it, pausing on a still image of Todd Anderson's face. Todd. 30-something, balding. Always a little too eager when he came to our house for company dinners. Sarah had hired him 6 months ago for her freight brokerage firm. Efficient, she'd called him. Dedicated. There was no explosion of rage, no shout. Just a cold, hard knot in my chest, tightening slowly. This wasn't emotion. It was data. A problem. One that required a logical, systematic approach. My first thought. Health. I picked up my phone, scrolled through contacts. Dr. Evans. My family doctor for years. I called his office, explained a non-urgent but time-sensitive matter, and scheduled appointments for Sarah and me for Friday afternoon. 2 separate appointments, 30 minutes apart. I didn't mention why. Friday came. Sarah complained about leaving work early for a checkup, but went along. We sat in Dr. Evans' waiting room, flipping through magazines. She talked about a difficult client. I nodded, detached. Dr. Evans called me in first. He was a man of few words, precise in his delivery. Mark, he began, looking at his chart. Your test results came back. Positive for chlamydia. I just looked at him. And Sarah's? He nodded, looking back at his papers. Hers too. Same thing. I thanked him, the words feeling foreign, and walked out. Sarah was next. 15 minutes later, she emerged from his office, a look of wide-eyed disbelief on her face. "Mark," she said, her voice a little breathless, Dr. Evans said. "He said we both have chlamydia." "How could that happen?" "We've been monogamous." I watched her, a forensic scientist observing a suspect's testimony. Her eyes, usually direct, darted away for a fraction of a second before locking back on mine. Her hand went to her throat, a common tell. "I don't understand," she repeated. But her voice held a subtle tremor that hinted at something other than pure confusion. "A performance. These things happen," I said, my voice even, a subtle lie of omission to gauge her reaction. I watched her closely. A flood of relief washed over her face, quickly suppressed. Her shoulders visibly relaxed. "I guess," she said, looking down at her hands. "I mean, how would we even know?" We walked out of the clinic and got into the car. The drive home was silent, the low hum of the engine filling the space between us. As I pulled into the driveway, Sarah reached for my hand. Her touch felt foreign. "I love you," she said, her voice soft, tentative. "I know," I replied. The car was in park. I turned off the engine. That night, after Sarah had fallen asleep, I slipped out of bed. The house was quiet. The only sound the gentle hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I went to my home office, a small room at the back of the house, usually reserved for my tax documents and the occasional late-night project. I closed the door softly. I logged into our joint bank accounts. No large, unexplained cash withdrawals. Our credit card statements were equally mundane. Groceries, gas, a few online purchases for clothes. Nothing immediately suspicious. I pulled up Sarah's phone records for the last 6 months. Her calls were mostly to clients. Her mother, Brenda. Todd Anderson's number appeared, but always during business hours, for brief durations. Nothing that screamed affair. It was too clean, too logical. Just as I was about to close the browser, my phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. "Check the work tablet. WhatsApp." It was another anonymous tip. Just like Kyle's, my network was expanding. I got up, walked to the kitchen. Sarah's work tablet, a sleek silver device, sat on the counter where she usually left it. I picked it up. The screen was dark, locked. I tried my birthday. Her birthday. Our anniversary. No luck. Then, a thought, cold and precise, slid into my mind. I typed Todd Anderson. The tablet unlocked. The screen lit up, WhatsApp already open. A group chat titled Bad Girls Club. The participants: Sarah, Brenda Hayes, Michelle, and Lisa. Brenda, whose bachelorette party had been the scene of my initial discovery. I started scrolling. The messages were a torrent, a confessional of casual betrayal and calculated deceit. It wasn't just Sarah. It was all of them. Each woman, seemingly respectable, married, was a participant in this shared deception. My fingers moved, scrolling faster, the words blurring, then sharpening into focus. Sarah. Mark's working late again. Perfect timing for Todd. Followed by a devil emoji. The date stamp was late October. I remembered that night. I had been working on a difficult proposal. She had brought me a sandwich and a beer, told me to take my time, that she'd handle dinner for herself. Brenda, girl, you're playing with fire. What if he finds out? Sarah's reply a few minutes later. Mark's too boring to suspect anything. He thinks I'm some saint. You know how he is, all logical and predictable. Predictable. The word hung in the air, a judgment. I scrolled further. Brenda had a long, rambling confession about Gary Nelson, a client of hers. Hooked up with Gary 3 weeks before the wedding, she'd written. Scott was on his bachelor trip. Couldn't resist. Scott Davies, her husband. A good man. A trusting man. Who loved Brenda with a quiet devotion. Then Brenda's true intent. Just need to stick it out for a few more months. Once the trust fund kicks in, I'm out. Scott's clueless. Thinks I'm devoted. Michelle and Lisa chimed in, offering encouragement, detailing their own escapades, as they called them. One was with a spin class instructor, the other with her husband's golf buddy. The details were graphic, vulgar. Their husbands were dismissed as suckers, easy marks, walking ATMs. It was a systematic network of infidelity, a support group for betrayal. They reveled in it, celebrated their deception, exchanged tips on how to keep their husbands in the dark. It wasn't a mistake. It was a lifestyle. I felt no anger, no heartbreak. Just a cold, steady determination. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. This was a pattern. A disease. Spreading through my social circle. I pulled out my own phone. Methodically, I took screenshots of every single message, every incriminating detail, every name, the devil emojis, the saints, the suckers, date stamps, times, names, evidence. Each click of my phone's camera was a hammer blow, building a case. Once I had captured everything, I scrolled back to the top of the chat, closed WhatsApp, and then powered down the tablet. I carefully placed it back on the kitchen counter, exactly where I'd found it. No trace. Then I returned to my office. Todd Anderson. It was time to learn more about the man who was now a key player in this elaborate scheme. I opened my browser and typed his name into the search bar. Todd Anderson's LinkedIn profile painted the picture of a successful career man, director of logistics for a regional freight company. Solid resume. Married to Susan Anderson, 2 children pictured in his profile photo, smiling, posed in front of a slightly overgrown rosebush. The suburban dream. Another piece of the puzzle, another family impacted by the Bad Girls Club. I cross-referenced Todd's public social media presence with Sarah's. Not Facebook, which they kept curated, but the less guarded platforms, the ones that often linked to location services. The metadata, usually overlooked, provided a quiet narrative. Over the past 6 months, their timelines showed an uncanny alignment. A coffee shop downtown on a Tuesday afternoon. A restaurant 20 miles away for a client lunch on a Thursday. A state park for a solo hike on a Saturday. Identical locations, identical days. It wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern. My phone rang again. Kyle Jensen. Got something else for you, Mark, he said, his voice as flat as before. I had a recorder running in the hallway. Picked up some conversations. He sent the file. I downloaded it. The audio was clearer than the video. The voices distinct. Sarah's voice unmistakable. Mark is so predictable. He thinks a good steak dinner and a Netflix night is peak romance. Todd, you make me feel alive again. Todd's voice, a low rumble, obscured at times by hallway noise, then clearer. You deserve it, Sarah. You deserve more than... predictable. Then Brenda Hayes's voice cut in, sharp and dismissive. Scott's sweet, bless his heart. But he's a golden retriever with a trust fund. Zero backbone. He just follows me around. Sarah laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated. Exactly. We need the stability, right? But the side pieces, that's where the excitement is. Brenda again. Totally. Boring stability at home. Wild rides when they're not looking. That's the secret to a long, happy marriage, I tell you. The conversation drifted, becoming more explicit, detailing their shared philosophy. Using their husbands for financial security, for a respectable front, while seeking thrills elsewhere. Brenda even elaborated on her plan. Once Scott's trust fund is fully accessible, I'm out. Sell the house. Move to Florida. He won't even see it coming. I listened to the entire file twice. The clarity of their intent, the cold calculation in their voices, left no room for doubt or rationalization. This wasn't a moment of weakness, not a lapse in judgment. It was a planned strategy. I saved the audio file to a secure folder, labeling it Exhibit C. The pieces were now falling into place. The video, the WhatsApp messages, the audio, a complete picture, a roadmap for what needed to happen next. There was no anger, only a quiet, precise resolve. The next morning, Sarah announced she had errands to run before work. A trip to the dry cleaner, then a quick stop at the grocery store. I watched her leave. Her cheerful, "See you later," echoing in the quiet house. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I picked up my phone. My first call was to Frank Rossi, a private investigator I'd used years ago for an insurance fraud case involving a dishonest employee. Frank was discreet, efficient, and had a knack for finding things people wanted to keep hidden. "Frank?" "Mark Daniels. I have a situation. Marital. Potentially involving multiple parties. Need discreet surveillance." He took the details without asking many questions. Next, Linda Clark, the divorce attorney. Known for her aggressive approach, her no-nonsense attitude, and her almost perfect track record, she specialized in high-asset cases and wasn't afraid to fight dirty. "Linda, Mark Daniels, I need to discuss filing for divorce. I have substantial evidence of infidelity and financial manipulation." She booked me for an urgent consultation the following day. Finally, my bank. I instructed them to transfer 90% of our liquid assets from our joint savings and checking accounts into a new, individual account under my name. Explicitly inaccessible to Sarah. A safeguard. Then, I began systematically removing my name from all our joint credit cards. The process was cold, procedural, like closing a business account. I started documenting every single asset, every piece of property, every investment. The slow, methodical dismantling had begun. Frank Rossi was efficient. Within 48 hours of our call, he had initiated surveillance on Sarah and Todd. His first report, delivered via secure encrypted email, included discrete photographs and short video clips. Not just the initial hotel, but another one on the other side of town, a more anonymous establishment. Coffee meetings, client lunches that extended for hours, park walks. The evidence was accumulating, concrete and undeniable. My first meeting with Linda Clark was a 3-hour session in her austere office. I laid out everything. The USB drive with the hotel video, the audio recording from Kyle, the WhatsApp screenshots. I watched her as she reviewed the files. Her expression remained neutral, but I detected a slight tightening around her eyes. A professional assessment of the damage. "This is strong, Mark," she stated, leaning back. "Very strong. Adultery? Certainly, but the financial aspect, the intent to deceive and exploit, that builds a powerful case for fraud and undue influence. We'll focus on both the moral misconduct and the financial misconduct. We will seek full disclosure of all assets, and I will recommend we aim for a disproportionate division in your favor, given the circumstances." Her words were precise, like a surgeon's instructions. I continued my own meticulous documentation. Every dinner Sarah claimed to have made, every gift I'd given her, every late night at work she'd had. I cross-referenced our joint account statements with the dates in the WhatsApp chats and Frank's reports. I discovered hidden credit card statements, paperless and paid from an account she'd opened without my knowledge. Small charges, at first. Expensive lingerie, a weekend trip to a bed and breakfast 2 hours away, solo, she'd claimed, for a spa retreat. The pattern revealed a systematic siphoning of joint funds, masked as personal expenses. Linda had recommended a forensic specialist for Sarah's work tablet. The specialist recovered deleted WhatsApp messages, conversations with Todd that went beyond casual flirting, explicit photographs Todd had sent, and a hidden folder containing images of Todd Anderson himself. The evidence was now more than just digital breadcrumbs. It was a complete visual record of their affair. Frank Rossi continued his surveillance on Todd Anderson. He confirmed Todd's routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays, after putting his kids to bed, he would leave the house around 9 p.m., telling his wife Susan he was working late or grabbing a beer with the guys. He'd return home around 2 a.m. The routine was predictable, almost mechanical. This pattern aligned perfectly with the dates and times in Sarah's recovered messages and the dates from Frank's own surveillance. I spent evenings, after Sarah was asleep, going through every property deed, every investment portfolio, every retirement account statement. Our house, the rental property we owned, my stock portfolio, her smaller mutual fund. I made copies of everything. The aim wasn't just to divide, it was to understand the full scope of our shared financial existence, so I could dismantle it strategically. Linda Clark had already drafted preliminary divorce papers. They were direct, citing grounds for adultery, demanding full disclosure of all assets, and outlining the request for sole access to our shared marital residence during proceedings. She wanted to file quickly, to maintain the element of surprise. I made sure all my communications with Frank and Linda were encrypted, using burner phones and new email accounts I'd set up solely for this purpose. I didn't want to leave any digital footprints Sarah could trace. Every message, every call, was a calculated move. Frank's final detailed report arrived. It included a comprehensive schedule of Sarah's movements, not just the bachelorette party, but all the subsequent trysts, cross-referenced with bank statements, cell tower data, and his own surveillance. A complete timeline of betrayal. Quietly, methodically, I began moving my most important personal items, sentimental photographs, legal documents, my grandfather's watch to a safe deposit box at a different bank, one Sarah didn't know about. I was preparing for an inevitable departure, making sure that when the time came, I would leave with everything I needed, and nothing I didn't. The process server arrived at our house at 6 p.m. on a Thursday, just as Sarah was walking in from work. I had arranged it for that specific time, a precise, calculated strike. He handed her a thick envelope. Her brow furrowed as she opened it, then her face went slack. Divorce papers. And a temporary restraining order concerning our shared finances, preventing her from making any withdrawals or transfers. "What is this, Mark?" Her voice was a whisper, laced with disbelief. I watched her, my expression calm. "It's a divorce, Sarah. Based on adultery and financial fraud." Shock gave way to a rapid descent into denial. "Adultery? Fraud? What are you talking about? Are you sick? This is insane." Then came the anger, hot and sudden. "You think you can just do this? After all these years?" "I think I can," I said, "and I will." Linda Clark moved swiftly. Her office transmitted the initial trove of evidence, the hotel video, Kyle's audio recordings, the WhatsApp screenshots to Sarah's newly retained attorney, a man known for his bluster and lack of preparation. He called Linda within hours, his bluster replaced by a quiet, strained tone. Next, I made a call I'd dreaded, not for myself but for the innocent party, Susan Anderson, Todd's wife. I kept my voice level, factual, devoid of emotion. I explained who I was and what I knew. I sent her a redacted version of the evidence, enough to make the truth undeniable. She thanked me, her voice trembling. Later that evening, I received a text from Frank Rossi. "Anderson household. Loud argument. Objects thrown. Police called for noise complaint. Susan threw him out." The domestic peace of the Anderson home had shattered. The following day, I learned from a discreet contact in the industry that news of Todd Anderson's affair had spread like wildfire through Cornerstone Transport Solutions. His professional reputation, built over years, was now in tatters. Then came Scott Davies, Brenda Hayes' fiancé. The wedding was just days away. I called him. Not anonymously this time. I laid out Brenda's treachery, playing parts of the audio, sending him key WhatsApp screenshots. He listened, silent, then thanked me. He sounded hollowed out. Frank's report came a few hours later. Scott had confronted Brenda at their rehearsal dinner. It had been, by all accounts, a spectacular scene. Brenda had fled the venue. The wedding was canceled, and the local news picked up the story. A small-town scandal involving two prominent families. Sarah, now stripped of her carefully constructed facade, tried to salvage what she could. She came to me, tearful, pleading. "Mark, please. We can fix this. I'm so sorry. I love you." I looked at her, seeing past the tears to the practiced deception. "I know," I said. "You know. But you don't love me, Sarah. You loved what I represented. The stability, the predictability." My voice was flat, no accusation, just observation. "There's nothing to fix." The very next day, Linda secured an emergency court order, citing Sarah's demonstrated financial recklessness during the affair, evidenced by the hidden credit card statements and the trips taken with joint funds. All our joint assets were frozen completely. Not just restricted, but frozen. Sarah, in a desperate attempt to erase traces, tried to access her work tablet. She discovered the deleted messages and explicit photos had been recovered. The realization must have hit her then. The depth of my preparation. Kyle Jensen, true to his word, provided a sworn affidavit detailing his role in exposing the affair. His quiet act of loyalty became a critical piece of evidence. I gave Linda my instructions. Pursue maximum financial penalties. No spousal support. I want her to stand on her own, just as she planned. As for the Bad Girls Club, the group chat went silent, then fragmented. Screenshots of their private betrayals spread. Michelle and Lisa, implicated by their own words, found their lives unraveling as well. They turned on each other, blaming, accusing. The camaraderie of their shared deceit, collapsing under the weight of exposure. It was a domino effect, precisely as I'd anticipated. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Scott Davies, the golden retriever with a trust fund, was not as docile as Brenda had believed. Reeling from the public humiliation and the depth of her betrayal, he launched his own investigation. He hired a forensic accountant, focusing specifically on Brenda's financial history and the timing of her attempts to access his trust fund. The Bad Girls Club messages, with Brenda's explicit plans, were now critical evidence in his own legal fight. Brenda, cornered and exposed, scrambled to salvage her reputation. She issued a carefully worded public statement, blaming Scott for emotional abuse and attempting to cast herself as a victim. But the digital evidence was too potent. The WhatsApp messages, particularly her confession about Gary Nelson, spread through the small-town network. Gary Nelson, now also implicated, faced his own social and professional fallout, further diminishing any credibility Brenda might have retained. Susan Anderson's divorce filing against Todd was swift and merciless. She sought full custody of their children, citing moral turpitude and significant child support, emphasizing Todd's flagrant disregard for his family. The quiet suburb was now a stage for the unraveling of multiple lives. At Cornerstone Transport Solutions, Todd Anderson was placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. The disciplinary action was a precursor to termination. His clients, hearing whispers and then direct reports of the scandal, began pulling contracts. Professional integrity was paramount in logistics, and Todd's had dissolved into gossip. Sarah, now abandoned by Brenda, Michelle, and Lisa, attempted to rally other friends. But the Bad Girls Club fallout had a chilling effect. No one wanted to be associated with the public scandal, with the women who openly mocked their husbands and reveled in their infidelity. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her invitations were politely declined. She found herself utterly isolated, her social circle evaporated. I worked with Linda, ensuring all key witnesses were prepared. The hotel staff who had seen Sarah and Todd together were ready to testify. Kyle Jensen's affidavit was legally sound. Every piece of the evidentiary puzzle was in place. The Richmond social scene, usually so polite and reserved, now buzzed with condemnation. Sarah and Brenda became pariahs. Invitations stopped. Whispers followed them in grocery store aisles. Their double lives, once so carefully hidden, were now laid bare for everyone to see. Scott Davies called me personally. "Mark," he said, his voice quiet, "I just wanted to thank you. I was blind. I didn't see any of it. You saved me a lifetime of misery." His gratitude was genuine, heavy with the weight of what he had almost lost. Sarah's attorney, a man named Henderson, tried to discredit my evidence in preliminary hearings. He argued invasion of privacy, doctored files, anything to muddy the waters. But the sheer volume, consistency, and corroboration of the evidence, the video, audio, recovered tablet data, Frank Rossi's reports, Kyle's affidavit made his arguments fall flat. Each attempt to poke holes only highlighted the undeniable truth. Todd Anderson's career did, in fact, crumble. Cornerstone Transport Solutions terminated his employment. Clients, citing loss of confidence, took their business elsewhere. His LinkedIn profile, once a testament to success, now stood as a digital tombstone. Brenda Hayes also lost her job. The negative publicity, coupled with the details of her fraudulent intentions toward Scott, led to her firm severing ties. She was a liability, her personal scandal contaminating her professional image. Through it all, I maintained a public veneer of dignified silence. I responded to inquiries with polite but firm no comments. I allowed Linda Clark and the mounting pile of evidence to speak for itself. There was no need for my own commentary. The facts were doing plenty of talking. The financial strain on Sarah and Todd began almost immediately. Legal fees mounted. Sarah's assets were frozen, her income diminished. Todd had no income. The cost of their choices was already becoming clear, a heavy burden they were now forced to carry. The initial court hearing was a precise, almost clinical affair. Linda Clark, sharp and unyielding, presented our case with a methodical efficiency that immediately established my advantageous position. Sarah's attorney, Henderson, attempted to paint me as a vengeful husband, driven by spite. But Linda countered with evidence, not emotion. The video, the audio, the WhatsApp messages, the forensic reports, each piece a cold, hard fact. The judge listened, impassive, as the narrative of calculated betrayal unfolded. Linda then laid out a comprehensive timeline of Sarah's affair, backed by my meticulous financial records and Frank Rossi's surveillance reports. It wasn't just about dates and times, it was about the expenses, the flights, the gifts, all incurred while Sarah maintained the facade of a devoted wife. Sarah was called to testify. She looked visibly nervous, her usual composed demeanor gone. Under Linda's relentless cross-examination, she stumbled. Questions about her lies, her deceit, her intentions, chipped away at her carefully constructed image. She admitted to the affair with Todd, but tried to downplay its significance, portraying it as a momentary lapse. Linda had the WhatsApp messages ready. Sarah's words, "Mark's too boring to suspect anything," echoed in the courtroom. Her face flushed. My own testimony was brief, factual. I stated the dates I became aware of the affair, the evidence I collected, the financial impact of her undisclosed spending. No emotion, just observations. The judge seemed to appreciate the clarity. One of the first tangible wins came when the court granted me temporary sole use of the Windsor Farms house. Sarah was ordered to find alternative accommodation. She packed a suitcase and left, her departure as quiet as my initial discovery of her infidelity. She moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town, a stark contrast to the house she had once planned to share with boring stability. The mandatory financial disclosure further solidified my position. Sarah's hidden credit card statements, the expenditures on expensive lingerie, the weekend trips with Todd, all came to light. The judge noted her reckless marital spending, which severely undercut her claims for spousal support or a significant share of our joint assets. Todd Anderson's divorce proceedings had also begun. His case was significantly more complex, entangled by his affair, his job loss, and Susan's fierce determination to protect her children. The ripple effects of the Bad Girls Club continued to spread. Sarah's attempts to access any remaining joint funds were consistently blocked by the court's restraining order. She found herself in significant financial distress, juggling legal fees with no income. Her side pieces had provided excitement, but no stability. Linda argued vehemently for me to retain the majority of assets, including the Windsor Farms house. She cited Sarah's marital misconduct, her fraudulent intentions, and her financial irresponsibility. The evidence was overwhelming, almost making her arguments redundant. Sarah, growing desperate, made several attempts to settle, offering less punitive terms, suggesting a 50-50 split. I instructed Linda to reject them all. I wasn't seeking vengeance, but justice, and a complete dismantling of the life she had so carelessly devalued. The emotional toll on Sarah became increasingly visible. Her once bright eyes were shadowed, her movements listless. She had lost weight. It was a stark contrast to my own continued stoicism. I felt nothing towards her, no pity, no triumph, just the steady pulse of having executed a plan. Anonymous messages of support continued to trickle in, often from people who knew Sarah's true character long before I did. Good for you, Mark. She got what she deserved. The community, once oblivious, was now well aware. The court ordered an independent appraisal of all marital assets. My meticulous documentation, painstakingly compiled over weeks, aligned almost perfectly with the appraiser's findings. It was another victory, another small piece of the puzzle locking into place. The final court hearings were a series of unarguable facts. Witness testimonies flowed seamlessly. The hotel staff confirming Sarah and Todd's presence, the forensic financial advisor detailing Sarah's hidden expenditures, even a former colleague of Sarah's who corroborated her late-night work excuses. Each account was a nail in the coffin of Sarah's defense. The judge, a stern woman with a reputation for impartiality, meticulously reviewed the extensive digital evidence. The Bad Girls Club chat logs were particularly damning. Her gaze, when it fell on Sarah, was one of quiet disapproval. Sarah sat, head bowed, the full weight of her deception crushing any remaining pretense. There was no room left for denial, only the grim reality of her choices. Todd Anderson's professional downfall was now complete. Cornerstone Transport Solutions officially announced his termination, citing violations of company policy and conduct unbecoming of an executive. His career, once promising, was a smoldering ruin. Susan Anderson's divorce from Todd concluded with a favorable settlement. She gained primary custody of their children, ensuring stability for them, and significant child support, forcing Todd to face the financial consequences of his actions. He was left with little, his life fractured. Brenda Hayes, too, faced the legal consequences of her actions. Scott Davies, through his attorney, launched a civil suit against her for breach of contract and emotional distress, explicitly citing her trust fund scheme as a calculated fraud. The money, the primary driver of her betrayal, now became the instrument of her ruin. Finally, the court issued its ruling on Mark and Sarah's divorce. The decision was unambiguous, heavily favoring me. Sarah was awarded minimal assets, primarily a small portion of her premarital savings. Crucially, she received no spousal support. Her once comfortable lifestyle, built on shared stability, was gone. I was granted full ownership of the Windsor Farms house, the home she had once called predictable. I also retained the significant portion of our combined investments, the ones I had meticulously documented and protected. The financial unraveling of Sarah's life was complete. The moral consequences extended beyond the courtroom. Sarah struggled to find new employment. Her reputation, once pristine in the Richmond social scene, was now irrevocably tarnished. Businesses were wary, and former colleagues kept their distance. She was a pariah, a cautionary tale. Todd Anderson, unable to bear the social and professional stigma, relocated out of Richmond. He left quietly, hoping to escape the lingering fallout of his affair, a shadow following him wherever he went. Brenda Hayes faced not only public humiliation but also imminent financial ruin. Her wedding, a symbol of her intended triumph, was a public scandal. Her professional career, like Todd's, was over. Her carefully crafted plans for Scott's trust fund had backfired spectacularly. I reflected on the precise, calculated execution of my plan. It had unfolded exactly as I had intended, step by methodical step. There was no exultation, no great joy, just a quiet, cold sense of satisfaction. The data had been analyzed, the problem solved, the consequences delivered. The emotional cost for all parties was evident. Sarah's hollow eyes, Todd's desperate flight, Brenda's public shame. For me, there was little outward change. The process had been difficult, certainly, but it had been a logical one. I had faced the truth, gathered the evidence, and acted. The weight of it settled, a permanent shift in my understanding of the world. The divorce decree arrived, a plain document that officially severed my ties to Sarah. I sold the Windsor Farms house, a place now stripped of meaning, and moved into a smaller home, simpler, more practical. Sarah, stripped of her HR director salary and assets, struggled to find work beyond low-wage jobs, her reputation a permanent stain. Todd Anderson vanished from Richmond, last seen working an entry-level position in another state, his family fractured, his career gone. Brenda Hayes, too, disappeared, her once promising future with Scott Davies a hollow echo. Scott, freed from the deceit, found a quieter happiness, eventually building a new life with a trustworthy partner. Kyle Jensen called, his voice calm, simply saying, "Justice served, Mark." I spent my days reflecting on the quietude of my new existence, free of pretense. My actions, calculated and cold, were a necessary response to profound deceit. I rebuilt my financial portfolio, focusing on self-reliance. The emotional scars remained, not as fury, but as a deepened understanding of human nature's darker side. I emerged, not unscathed, but hardened, grounded in a colder realism. The consequences had played out for each,